Hi friends, it's Megan from Point and Polish, and today I'm going to show you how I gave this cute little pedestal table a beautiful spring refresh. I found this cute little table for $4.50 at my local thrift store, and I knew it had such good bones. So I started off by cleaning it. I took out my White Lightning by Dixie Belle, and I gave it a good spray down. Make sure that you always wear gloves when you're using this just so it doesn't irritate your skin, but it's great for cleaning off any grime from your surface before you paint. Yuck, gross. Next, I had to replace the plugs where the screws were for the legs. One of them was missing and the other two just didn't seem to fit well, so I replaced them and glued in new ones. Then I took out my Dixie Belle Boss. This is a primer. It helps your paint to adhere really well, and it blocks any bleed through or tannins from the wood. This particular primer is nice because it goes on white so you can see where you're putting it on, but then it dries clear. And I usually do 2 coats and then I let it dry overnight. Next, I grabbed some chalk mineral paint by Dixie Belle, and this is the color Burlap. And you can see by my towel and the little bit that I had on the table that I actually spilled the paint right before I was about to paint the table. It was brand new paint, major bummer, but I really love this color. Burlap is a really pretty neutral. I'm just using it as a base for the table. I am going to be adding texture on top of it, so it didn't need to be a perfect first coat, but I just wanted to get that base color throughout. And I used my mister because it helps the paint to move a little more evenly as you go. This video is in collaboration with a bunch of other wonderfully creative ladies. Go check out their channels on the playlist and see what items they thrifted and flipped this week. Next, I wanted to add some texture to my table. So I grabbed my Burlap paint again and Sea Spray by Dixie Belle. This is a texture additive. And then I grabbed a chip brush. You want to use a brush that you can just throw away afterwards because you can't wash Sea Spray down the sink. So then I just take my paint and I sprinkle a little bit of the Sea Spray additive on top and mix it together, and I basically just keep mixing back and forth, a little bit of paint, a little bit of Sea Spray, until I get a brownie batter-like consistency. Next comes my favorite step of this whole table, and that's adding the texture. I love adding texture to pieces because you don't have to worry about the brush strokes and making things even or perfect. You just take your brush and stipple on that paint, and any little brush marks or peaks or valleys are only going to add to the character of the piece. So I went ahead and added texture to the whole piece because I want it to have a really fun, kind of grungy, aged look. Next, I took a very fine grit sandpaper and lightly went over the whole piece just to knock down any sharp pieces that may have been created from the texture. Then I wanted to darken the overall look of the paint, so I did a color wash using Mud Puddle by Dixie Belle. This is a really pretty lighter brown color, and I watered it down quite a bit because I'm really just doing a wash over the whole piece to give it a slightly darker look and to give it some age by blending it out into the edges. I worked in small sections and then I wiped it back immediately with the towel. Then I took my fine grit sandpaper again and I lightly sanded the whole piece to get some of the burlap to come through the color wash that I just added. I also took Drop Cloth by Dixie Belle, which is an off-white, and I mixed it with some burlap and I dry brushed it onto the piece. I let it hit the high points on the texture and it just lightened it up and gave the piece a little bit more dimension. Dry brushing is a fun way to add a little bit more detail to your piece. Next, I grabbed the Floral Collection Transfer by Redesign with Prima. This is a really beautiful transfer, and I really like it for small pieces like this because it's easy to cut up and kind of reposition the transfer where you want it on the piece. I started by cutting up some of the flowers and just moving them around to see where I wanted them to go on the piece. Once I had my design set, I peeled the backing off the transfer one by one, and I very carefully placed it onto the piece. You cannot pull a transfer back off once you put it on, so be really careful when you're placing it. Then I took this little burnishing tool which comes with the transfers, and I basically am rubbing the transfer into the piece. This takes a while. It takes some definite elbow grease and some patience. You have to move very slowly and pull it back bit by bit. You don't want to pull too fast because then the transfer will come with the backing. So this took me quite a while to do. Look how beautifully all those transfers turned out and went together. Once it's all done, I take a microfiber cloth or pad and I gently rub down the whole piece again just to make sure there aren't any bubbles or edges sticking up. Then I grabbed Easy Peasy Spray Wax by Dixie Belle, and you could use any clear wax for this next step. I just chose this one because it's easy to use. You just spray it on and then take your pad or microfiber cloth and wipe it back. Then, while the wax is still wet, I grab my Dixie Dirt by Dixie Belle. This is just a real fine powder that helps give dimension and age to your piece, and you barely need any. I just took an artist brush and just barely tapped it in there, tapped off the excess, and then I went ahead and brushed it into the crevices and the feet, places that would get natural age and dirt. And it really gave a really beautiful look to the piece and just kind of that final touch that it needed. The nice thing with Dixie Dirt is if you get it on too heavy in any area, you can just take your clear wax and wipe it back off. I love how it highlights all these little crevices and details in the pedestal portion of this table. And my last step was just to seal the piece. I left the bottom portion sealed with wax, but I did want some more durability on the top portion of the table, so I took this clear coat in flat and my applicator sponge, and I went ahead and did 2 coats of the clear coat flat on the top of the table. And here is the final product. Look at this beautiful bloomin' beauty. I just love all that texture and how it pops. I think that the wildflowers are the perfect touch for the top of this table. It would be beautiful as an end table or even as a plant stand. I love how this little thrift flip turned out. So let me know, what do you think? Did you learn anything new from this video? Do you like how it turned out? Go check out all the other videos on the thrift flip playlist. And happy painting! See you next time, guys.